Yo, Happy New Year everyone. If you're new to the channel, my name is Alex and I make videos about photography, gear, tutorials, and other content to help you become a better photographer. There are big things happening in 2020 and it's gonna be an amazing year for photography and just overall creativity. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you can follow along on this journey and we can all start off this year strong. So I made this video to kick off the new year by answering one of my most asked questions. What beginner photography camera should I buy? Well, the answer may surprise you. It's a camera that came out over 6 years ago. The Sony a6000 was a powerful camera when it came out in 2014, and it's still one of the best-selling cameras today. In this video, I'm gonna go over some of my favorite features of the a6000 and why it's still a worthy buy in 2020. But stick around until the end, where I go over some of the negatives and why this camera may not be for you, as well as some alternatives that you can consider. So in the box, you get some standard paperwork like quick start guide and the warranty card, Sony neck strap, which I recommend you swap out immediately, the battery, charging cable, and of course, the camera itself. So this little camera packs some very impressive specs. Let's start off with the sensor. It has a 24 megapixel sensor, which is more than enough for web use, prints, and even some heavy cropping in post. Just look at how much detail you can resolve, even from 100% crop of this image. Of course, this APS-C sensor can't really compare to some of the newer full frame sensors coming out, but it can still produce some pretty clean images in low light photography, which I'll get into more detail later in the video. But if you're just starting out, this sensor is still one of the best, and it will definitely help you become a better photographer by letting you shoot in all different kinds of conditions. But a sensor is no good if you can't even focus on the subject and capture the shot, which is why the autofocus system on the a6000 is truly impressive. It has 179 autofocus points, and they are plenty fast to capture moving subjects like dogs or toddlers. The autofocus system is also pretty smart. Sony calls this 4D focus, which basically just means that the autofocus system will switch between single focus to continuous depending on your subject. The a6000 also has the infamous Sony eye autofocus, and although it doesn't track the eye like in newer cameras, it's still really powerful for stills and nails focus on the eye, especially with a longer lens like a 50 or even an 85mm. The ISO range also goes up to 25,600 ISO, which means that I can shoot in low light and get pretty good results. This is a sample image shot at 400 ISO. You can see that it's a pretty clean image and there's really nothing to complain about. At ISO 1000, you can start to see a little bit of noise, but the color and dynamic range are still there. ISO 3200 is where you start to see that noise creep in a bit more, but honestly, this isn't even that bad. This shot is taken at ISO 6400, and you can start to see a hit to the colors and dynamic range here. It's pretty good for an APS-C sensor, and you shouldn't really expect full frame performance at this price point. And just for fun, here's a shot maxed out at 25,600 ISO. It's crazy how it's still a decent image. Super noisy, super grainy, and details are really mushy. I mean, this is an extreme case, but if this is what it takes to get that shot, then I'm honestly fine with it compared to nothing at all. Now onto one of the most mind-blowing specs of the a6000, its ability to shoot 11 frames per second. This means that you can hold down the shutter and it can snap 11 pictures in just 1 second. Continuous shooting is a killer feature that I use almost every time I shoot. If you've seen some of my behind the scenes photography walk videos, then you know that I love shooting in continuous. And with 11 FPS, you get a really great advantage over some of those other cameras that can only do 5 or 8 FPS. Just having that speed and versatility when you're out means that you can point your camera at a subject and know that it can keep up. Alright, so it's clear that the a6000 has a lot of great features, but it's still a camera after all, and with a camera you have to use it. So what's the build like and how does it feel in your hand? As you can see, the a6000 is very small and compact. It weighs in at only 12 ounces with the battery. I don't think there are any other interchangeable lens camera that rival the size of the a6000 at this price and spec. The size of this camera is a huge plus for me. This can just slip into my backpack or even my coat jacket, and I can just have it with me wherever I am. It's also great for those social events and family gatherings where it'll be awkward to bring out a big full frame camera. But when I pull out the a6000, it's just so small, unobtrusive, and fun to shoot with. The build quality is pretty good as well, with a mostly metal construction and a rubberized grip. It has a nice weight to it, and by no means does it feel like you're holding a toy. The buttons are also clicky, tactile, and stiff. This is great because I can change all my settings with just one hand and I don't have to fumble around and trying to find these buttons. So another plus for the a6000 is that it shares the same ecosystem as the rest of the Sony mirrorless lineup. This means that you can use all of your E-mount lenses across bodies, no matter if it's APS-C or full frame. Of course, with full frame, you have to crop in to avoid those black borders, but the physical mount is the same. Basically, what this means for you is that if you buy the a6000 now as a starter camera and you want to upgrade in a few years to maybe a 6600 or even an A7 series, then you can keep all your lenses, especially if you buy full frame lenses now and you don't have to repurchase them again in the future. Now, the next pro to buy an a6000 is an extremely underrated one. All Sony's cameras come with Capture One. This is a great editing software that can help you get started with manipulating and editing your photos to your own style. And since it's free with your camera, you don't have to pay for a subscription like with Photoshop or Lightroom if you're not sure if you even want to commit to that kind of software. It's a great program to start learning on and to really hone in those basics. I am working on another behind the scenes photography walk video where I exclusively shoot with the a6000 and I can show you how it handles in real life situations. So if you want to see that video, definitely give this one a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss it when it comes out. Of course, this camera isn't a magical unicorn and it has its cons as well. The screen and viewfinder are starting to show its age with a low resolution and no touchscreen abilities. It tilts but doesn't flip forward for selfies or vlogs. Speaking of vlogs, the video capabilities on this camera are also pretty limited at only 1080p and no 4K recording. But the a6000 was developed to be a stills camera first, and all of its specs are really geared toward helping you take better pictures, not video. It also doesn't have a mic jack, but it does charge with USB, which is pretty convenient since a lot of other electronics also use the same cable. If you're someone who has bigger hands, you might not like the ergonomics of this camera since the grip is pretty shallow and the overall form factor is just really compact. I have no problems holding this camera for long periods of time, but I know some people who would throw an extended grip on there just to have something beefier to hold. But even with all those shortcomings, I seriously doubt you'll find a better camera in that sub $500 price point. If you have a bit of a higher budget, definitely check out some of the newer cameras like the a6100 and 6600 that have better video capabilities and newer technology. And if you want to dive straight into full frame, I really can't recommend the a7 III enough. Of course, all of the cameras I mentioned are from the Sony lineup because that's what I'm familiar with, and I'm not comfortable recommending a camera that I haven't even used extensively for long periods of time. But a lot of people are happy with Nikon, Canon, and Fuji and other camera manufacturers as well. So definitely do your research and even go to a store to check these cameras out in person. I also try to reply to everyone's comments, so if you have a question about the a6000, just drop it in the comment section below and I'll try to reply or address it in my future video. As always, thanks for watching and have an amazing, creative, and successful 2020. Peace.